and welcome to this month's Wildlife Wednesday Monthly Roundup. I'm Tenley Thompson.
And I'm Tyler Greenlee.
And we've got some great video footage from all over the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem to show you this month. So let's go ahead and dig in. For starters, we need a bear update. And who better to give us a bear update than Tyler himself?
One of the most sought-after species in the national parks of northwestern Wyoming is the bear. They are often one of the first requested animals when we give wildlife tours, and it's easy to see why. These large carnivores have deep roots in our culture, from childhood stories like Goldilocks and the Three Bears to non-fiction books like Ghost Grizzlies, a book that speculates on surviving hidden grizzlies in the South San Juan Mountains. We spend many hours with these creatures, during which we observe some of the most interesting wild behaviors, such as these black bear cubs playing together. We are also able to observe these bears throughout their life cycle, a life cycle which is very evident during the spring mating season. This life cycle has led to a quite eventful May season. One of our first bear encounters this spring was Grizzly Bear 610. Our guide and naturalist, Bo Weldon, spotted her early in May, and she had quite the surprise for us. She had 3 cubs of the year. This is above the average number for bears in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Grizzlies usually only have 2 cubs. Grizzlies give birth during the month of February, and these cubs are only about 1 pound at birth. They nurse and grow with their mother during these late winter and early spring months, hidden in the winter den. In May, they emerge and follow their mother into the landscape looking for available food. This is the most vulnerable time for these cubs, as coyotes, wolves, and other bears pose a serious threat to the young bear's survival. This is why female bears with brand new cubs are some of the last bears to awake from hibernation. When bear cubs reach their 3rd spring, they are eventually chased off by their mother, and they transition to the subadult stage. No longer under the protection of their mother, this is when we see most young bears disperse and often get into trouble. This spring, Grizzly Bear 399 chased off the 4 cubs she had been raising for the past couple of years. There is a lot of concern about these bears' future, as they were raised around humans and have been fed human-supplied food. Only time will tell if these bears make it to adulthood. In the meantime, we can do our part to protect these young bears and other young bears by securing food attractants like trash, bear feeders, and compost. Teton County is now in the process of supplying and implementing bear-proof trash cans throughout the community in order to prevent this sort of bear conflict in the future. However, humans are not the only danger for young subadult bears on their own for the first time. Last week in Yellowstone, a huge male grizzly, estimated to be over 500 pounds, killed a 2 to 3-year-old subadult bear. This was witnessed in front of a large crowd, and many people have questions. If you've heard about this and have questions about what exactly happened, please ask us in the Q&A session of this broadcast. Many members of the carnivore family practice infanticide and cannibalism, and males often kill younger males to reduce future mating competition. One of our guides, Sarah Ernst, confirmed this subadult grizzly was a young male, and so it is in the large boar's best interest to eliminate this future competitor. This boar was in the process of courting a female grizzly who had come into heat, and so was going to be territorial to any bear, especially other males. In this instance, the boar did up killing this young subadult grizzly. However, this death is part of the grizzly bear life cycle. Not all bears can survive, but those that do live on to reproduce and to raise the next generation. After killing the subadult, the boar proceeded to mate with the female. Next spring, she will likely give birth to a brand new batch of cubs, just like 610 did this spring. This sort of drama and interesting life cycle of grizzlies and all the animals in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is why us guides love our job so much, and why we love showing you guys, a glimpse of what we observe out here in Yellowstone. And man, it's been an exciting spring. Thank you all for tuning in to Wildlife Wednesday. My name is Tyler Greenlee, and I'll see you in the broadcast.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to me talk about bears. I know there was a lot of information there, and so, it's been a very eventful May, and so if you have any questions about bears, please ask us that in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them and find those questions. Well, up next, we have Laura talking about moose calves. Baby bears are not the only animals or baby animals out in the spring. We also are having our first moose calf sightings. And so here is Laura to talk about baby moose.
Oh, hey guys, this is Laura. It's a cool, wet springtime day here in Western Wyoming. And I have an exciting announcement to make. I was able to spot my first moose calf of the year just the other day. Thanks to guide Sean Martin, who alerted me to that calf, I was able to see it with its mother out and about in the park. As a company, we've noted that moose calves are usually out and about by June 1st. So this year, being able to see a moose calf on May 25th was quite early. For the first couple of days of a moose calf's life, we might not see it at all. Mama moose, who are usually relatively solitary, will isolate themselves into a secretive area to give birth to her new calf. She'll bed down and stay with that newborn calf, licking it and tending to it in the first couple hours of its life. Moose calves are kind of like baby horse colts, where they've got these long stilt-like legs that are really wobbly. So it takes a couple hours for that moose calf to stand up on its hoof. It might have success, or maybe not the first couple of times it tries to stand up. But within just a couple of days, that moose calf is able to walk and even run within 4 or 5 days faster than I can. I mean, I don't pride myself on being a fast runner, but still, that's pretty impressive that a newborn calf could be faster than me within less than a week. Moose spend a lot of their time in riparian areas near rivers or lakes. So within the first 2 weeks of that moose calf's life, it'll also get its first swim lesson. We affectionately call these calves mooselings or mooselets, although the technical term is calf, just like with bison or elk or cows. They're great followers. They stick right by their mother's side, typically for the first year of their life. Female calves might stay with their mother for longer than a year, whereas bull calves, male calves, get run off right before the mama gives birth to her next calf. In areas with great habitat, when the vegetation is perfect for moose browse, then the twinning rate could increase to 30 to 40%. So that could grow a moose population a lot more rapidly than just giving birth to those singleton calves. In our area, biologists estimate that we have somewhere between 300 to 400 moose. Now, we think that's a low moose count for the habitat provided. Just a few years ago, there was a low calving rate. In 2009, there were only 10 calves per 100 cows in the Jackson area moose herd. So that would cause a decline in the population. However, the good news is this year in 2021, biologists recorded a count of 50 moose calves per 100 cows. So we'd expect a slight rebound in that population. Moose are really vulnerable to heat. So these moose counts are conducted over the winter by airplane. That's a great time to see moose. Moose are a lot more visible when they don't have to protect themselves from the blazing hot sun in the afternoon. They'll come out of the woodwork and spend more time in snow-covered areas browsing on a plant called bitterbrush. Whereas transitioning into the summer season, you might not see moose as often during the heat of the day. Moose tend to heat stress around 60, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So actually today is perfect moose weather. Well, cool. I hope you get a chance to see some of those cute little calves this spring. And I hope you have enjoyed our footage. Aren't they adorable? Well, cheers, guys. Happy moose watching.
Thanks so much, Laura, and thanks to all of the great guides who contributed to this month's Wildlife Wednesday, from Tyler, of course, to Bo, Chris, Seth,
Kirk
Laura,
and Mark.
Kirk, Mark.
Uh-huh.
So many of our staff have so much to do with the production of this every month, whether it's by contributing video or contributing their great knowledge, and we really appreciate everybody on our team. If you've got a Wildlife Wednesday favorite, let us know in the comment section who you want to hear more from, of course. But one of the best things about our team is that we've got folks from so many different backgrounds, and one of my favorite folks to have on Wildlife Wednesday is our guide Seth, who has a background in geology, and he wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my favorite rock in the Yellowstone ecosystem this week, which of course is obsidian.
Hello there everyone, Seth Latka here today to talk to you about obsidian. Now you might come across this really glassy, shiny mineral as you walk through Yellowstone, whether it be under your feet as little flakes in the gravel or embedded in cliffs or boulders. So we'd like to take the opportunity to teach you more about this really cool rock. Igneous rocks are formed from the cooling of molten magma, and magma is melted rock that is still underground. And it's identified as lava once it leaves the Earth's crust. If magma cools under the Earth's surface, we call the resulting rock an intrusive igneous rock. And if lava cools on the Earth's surface, we call the resulting rock an extrusive igneous rock. Slow cooling rates of magma or lava result in really large crystals growing, and rapid cooling of lava or magma results in smaller crystals growing. Obsidian is an extrusive volcanic glass created when magma is extruded from a volcano and quickly becomes quenched or super cooled, so that crystals have almost no time to grow. The color is not from crystal growth, but rather impurities in the silicon dioxide glass, such as magnesium and iron. Obsidian is really rich in silica, about 65 to 80%, which is the primary ingredient for our modern man-made glass. It's low in water and has a chemical composition similar to rhyolite, another common lava rock found in Yellowstone. Now, obsidian has a glassy luster, as you can see it kind of shining in the light here, and it's slightly harder than window glass. It's typically jet black in color, but the presence of hematite, which is iron oxide, or basically rusting iron, produces red and brown varieties, sometimes known as mahogany obsidian, and the inclusion of tiny gas bubbles may create a golden sheen as well. Now, what is it used for and who used it? Obsidian was used by Native Americans and many other early peoples for weapons, implements, tools, and ornaments. The ancient Aztec and ancient Greek civilizations also used obsidian for mirrors. Now, obsidian is not just found in Yellowstone. It's found across North America, but a lot of it has actually been sourced from Yellowstone. Obsidian was first quarried from areas within Yellowstone for tool making more than 11,000 years ago. It is the United States' most widely dispersed source of obsidian by hunters and gatherers. It is found along trade routes all the way from western Canada to Ohio. Obsidian from Yellowstone is the primary source of obsidian in a large concentration of Midwestern sites, including about 90% of obsidian found in Hopewell mortuary sites in the Ohio River Valley, dating back to about 1,800 years ago. Obsidian sources each have their own molecular structure that scientists catalog and can match to artifacts as they find them across North America. So with this data, researchers can piece together ancient trade routes between tribes, which helps us understand how tribes interacted with each other. So keep an eye out for this really beautiful mineral throughout the park. Please be aware that extracting anything from a national park, whether it be antler sheds, rocks, or artifacts, is illegal. Part of the magic when exploring Yellowstone is the possibility of stumbling upon these unique resources. But they are resources and they are finite. If everyone was to take these interesting finds out of the park, then future visitors, scientists, and researchers wouldn't be able to enjoy them as you did when you first discovered them. So please leave any finds in their natural place within the park, and remember, geology rocks and geography is where it's at.
Thanks so much, Seth. I think we focus so much on wildlife on this program because, of course, we all love looking at all those animals out there. But so much of what we do is geology, history, all these other things as well. So big thanks to Seth for chipping in with some of his great geology knowledge. I think, of course, that I do want to mention everybody that the most popular part of what we do every week is our Ask a Naturalist segment, which will be coming up after our trivia question of the week. So if you've got a question for Tyler and I, feel free to send along a stumper. We've already had some good questions in the comments section. Do write that in the comments. We'll be answering them live, and we do answer questions from every age. Everything you want to know about the natural world, particularly in Grand Teton and Yellowstone. But if you want to talk about clouds or stars or wildlife in
all over the world,
we're happy to talk about that. So if you've got something that you've been wondering about, feel free to let us know in the comment section. Okay, it's time for my second favorite part of the program, which is the trivia question of the month for your chance to win. So if you'd like a chance to win a gift card from our EcoTour Adventure store, all you have to do is answer in the comment section the correct answer to our trivia question, and you'll be entered to win. And we'll go ahead and we'll pick one lucky winner and contact them to get that great gift card to our store. Now, our sponsored item of the month from our EcoTour store is our coffee press. Now, we're known for our French press coffee on our tours. People love our French press coffee. So we went ahead and we teamed up with the company that makes our beautiful French presses to make a great grizzly design made by local artist Nicole Gayton, who really is amazing. So if you want to have some of that great French press coffee like we have on tour, what's great about these is they're incredibly portable. You can take them out on your next adventure.
Great for camping. Great for hiking.
So we'll go ahead and we'll get up in the comments section a link to that item in our web store. But we've got lots of great items worth checking out over there on our website. So maybe if you win today, you'll have a chance to check out any of those items and buy them for yourselves. In the meantime, if you want to support any of the guides you've seen in this program, feel free to send them a tip via our web store as well. We are very happy to produce this free of charge for everybody every month. We're thrilled that you've chosen to join us. But of course, our guides are always happy for a little tip for their extra work that they do to help us produce this program every month. Okay, enough advertising. Let's get to the fun part. We have first and foremost last Wildlife Wednesday's trivia question, which normally I'd say was last month, but we skipped last month. So
2 months ago, April.
And then, I'm going to let Tyler do it because he's our quiz master. And see, so if you comment on the answers on this one in the comment section, we already have a winner for these two questions. Then we'll do this month's, but we got to answer the last trivia question. So, all right, here we go.
And in your head, feel free to guess as we go through these. So 2 months ago, we asked a couple questions about big cats. And so the first one is we asked what species of cat lives in Grand Teton National Park, which one is native. And so, maybe for a couple seconds here, look through those answers, see which one you think is the correct one. Some good answers we got 2 months ago for this question.
People definitely either knew right away or they were definitely a little confused.
So this one, the answer to this question is the bobcat. So number 2. In Grand Teton National Park, we do have 2 native cat species absolutely that are breeding here. We have the cougar and we have the bobcat. Cougar is obviously our only big cat species. They hunt deer and elk and are very difficult to see. In fact, cats in general are very difficult to see out here, but they are present in low numbers. There is a bit of debate on whether we have Canadian lynx. There have been records of Canadian lynx moving through the area. They're probably dispersing individuals from Montana populations, from like Glacier National Park, or dispersing individuals from Colorado. And so Wyoming's kind of in this weird spot where we don't really think we have a breeding lynx population, but occasionally we get individuals that are kind of crossing that gap between Colorado and Montana. So pretty cool. We did have a challenge question 2 months ago. And so let's look at that challenge question real quick. So, we just established that we have mountain lions in Grand Teton and in Yellowstone. And so I was curious if anyone had any guesses for how many mountain lions are out here. This area is absolutely massive. We have, Yellowstone National Park is around 8,000 square kilometers around, 8,000 square kilometers, 3,000 square miles. It's a huge area, and you would think that landscape would support a lot of big predators, but in fact, only a small portion of Yellowstone has a cougar population. And so, look at those numbers. The answer for the challenge question was D, 34 to 42 mountain lions.
Did you get it?
Yellowstone National Park. Yeah, so good job for all of you guys.
I had to think about that one. That was tough. You guys have
Mhm.
sometimes said our trivia questions are a little too easy, so every once in a while I try to throw a real stumper in there.
Exactly.
And we definitely had answers all over the map on that one.
Yeah.
So if you answered those questions last month and you answered correctly, each one was a chance to win. So big congratulations to our winner. And then, of course, we do have our trivia question of this month. So take it away, Tyler.
Yeah, so 2 months ago we talked about big cats. This month we decided to ask a question about beavers. And so here's the question. We have a nice little beaver video here for you guys. So the question is, how long can beavers hold their breath? And this was one that, when I was kind of researching beavers, kind of stumped me. Beavers are kind of surface feeders. You can see this beaver here, pulling some sticks out of its storage. And oftentimes you see beavers feeding at the surface of the water, but they do dive quite deep, oftentimes to feed at the bottom of their ponds. And so, you often don't see them swimming underwater for all that long, but that can, I'll give a little bit of a hint, that can be a little of a trick there. Beavers swim under the ice during winter, and they can actually lower the level of their ponds in the winter so that they can have air under the ice to breathe. And so
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And so if you didn't get a chance to read that whole question, feel free to scroll back after the broadcast and answer in the comments what you think the answer is.
Yeah. So if you think you know, go ahead and let us know in the comment section. We'll choose one lucky winner, let them know by direct message if they win that gift card to the EcoTour Adventure store. So big thanks to Tyler for our great trivia question of the month. He always comes up with a good one. Let us know if you have a preferred topic next month you'd like us to make a video about, or you want to know more trivia about. For instance, did you know beavers are the second largest rodent in the world?
Yeah.
Tell me in the comment section if you know what the biggest rodent is in the world. People don't think of beavers as a rodent, but those big pointy teeth are always a dead giveaway, right? But yes, all right. So now it's time for my very favorite part of the program, which is the Ask a Naturalist segment. We've already got a couple good questions. Now, the way this is going to work is you're going to ask us the comments in the comment section live, and then we're going to answer live. We've got our little iPad here. So if you see us looking down, it's because we're looking down at your questions as you ask them. We'll try to get them from the order of which received and get to everybody in the time that we have. I see some great answers coming in. People are definitely kind of all over the map, actually. This is great. So let me go ahead and we'll go up to the first one, which of course we've got to start with controversy on our Ask a Naturalist segment, right? That's half the fun. Mark, you've got a good one. He says, any thoughts on the bison goring incident this week in Yellowstone National Park? Also, there was video footage of people parking to take pictures of a mother bear and young within 20 feet, causing a car jam. So, Mark, you're asking two questions there, and they're both wonderfully controversial and naughty. I don't know. I'll take this one. Is that all right?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So, look, we are still getting details about the bison goring incident. Very, very unfortunate. There's been a lot of talk amongst the professional guiding community, of course, about this, because what a tragic circumstance. We did receive word today from Yellowstone National Park that it was a fatal goring. For those of you guys who are not up to date on Yellowstone news, because why would you be, I guess, This woman was in an area, it was Biscuit Basin, right? Yeah.
Or no, it was Black Sand.
Black Sand. They're
Basin.
right next to each other. Just outside of Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park, there were bison nearby. She got within 25 yards of this bison who felt threatened by that behavior, and he tossed her more than 10 feet through the air. We don't know details in terms of all the gory details. Did she die on the scene, or did she die in the hospital, or anything like that? But very, very unfortunate incident. Unfortunately, not the first nor last time that's going to happen. When we think about animal attacks on humans in Yellowstone National Park, after mosquitoes, of course, when it comes to large animals, bison are by far and away the most deadly, which is oftentimes misunderstood. I always like to joke on my tours, it's the big herbivores that tend to be dangerous in every ecosystem. Like, for instance, do you guys know the most deadly animal in Africa? Large animal, not mosquito again.
Megafauna, giant animal.
Yeah, that would be the hippo. Has killed more people than lions and tigers and all of these other animals. In
India, it's the rhino and elephant.
Yeah, rhino and elephant. Water buffalo are also incredibly dangerous. Cape buffalo, of course, also are up there in those top fives. So unsurprisingly, when we think about large animals in North America, it's the herbivores that are the most dangerous. Even elk can be quite dangerous if you perch too close. So Yellowstone has really strong rules about this. You can't get closer than 25 yards to any large animal, and you shouldn't be getting closer than 100 yards to bears or wolves because they're sensitive species. It's not just that they could harm you, it's that you could harm them by disrupting their natural behavior, which gets us to the second part of your question, which was the bear jam that you were discussing, where, people were parking to take pictures really, really close to a bear. What happens is bears will sometimes get habituated. We've talked about this a little bit on the program before. And some mother bears will utilize what's called roadside behavior as a very clever technique to provide some protection of their young. So as we've sort of gone into a little bit already, one of the major causes of mortality of young koi, which means cub of the year bears, are male bears in the ecosystem. And we've certainly seen some evidence of that this month.
We talked a little bit about that in the bear video.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So one of the things that some female bears do, the minority of female bears with koi will do, is they'll actually take them to the areas that are closer to people in the national parks. These are grizzlies primarily utilizing this behavior, although Great Smoky Mountains and things, we'll see black bears do the same thing. So Glacier National Park, Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton National Park, some bears will actually choose to kind of use areas that are relatively close to people because male bears typically want nothing to do with humans and will avoid those areas, which provides a certain degree of protection to cubs. Unfortunately, there's a trade-off of this. We don't have great data, but the only study that's really looked into this shows that there's a 50% decreased mortality of cubs who parents use roadside behavior. So if a mother takes her cubs right to the road, like we're discussing, they have about a 50% increased chance of survival. However, that also human habituates them and makes them more likely to get into human food sources, get too close to humans, and get in trouble with agencies managing bears. And so after they turn 3 years old, they have a 50% increased rate of mortality as a result of this, mostly by being hit by vehicles, but also some of these other issues. So unfortunately, you get a mixed bag out of this behavior, and different national parks manage it different ways. Glacier National Park doesn't allow bears to have that roadside behavior. They use hazing to keep bears off of the roads to protect people and also prevent traffic jams. Yellowstone kind of takes this opposite stance, which is that the bears can go wherever they want, and it's the park's job to manage the people, which takes a lot of personnel, a lot of money, and that's sort of an example of what you just saw there. And then Grand Teton kind of threads this middle ground, because as long as bears are not posing a threat to public safety and the personnel are available, they'll allow certain bears to utilize this benefit of being near people. Unfortunately, there aren't always rangers around when these bears are doing this. People aren't always using common sense. If, when we say, oh my gosh, how is this person getting so close to this bison? Or how are these people getting so close to bears? Well, gosh, if you didn't grow up around these animals, you don't know much about these animals. So much of our country doesn't have dangerous wildlife beyond rattlesnakes, perhaps.
One time it did, but for the most part, it's all gone.
Yeah, like if you live in, say, I don't know, Virginia, copperheads,
Coyotes,
bobcats,
bobcats
maybe, but you're certainly not going to have to worry about bison or grizzly bears.
And even if you live in an area with dangerous wildlife, it's likely different than what we have here. We get a lot of people from Florida, and of course they have gators and sharks, which we don't have here. And so your behavior around those animals, you obviously don't want to approach them, but your steps for avoiding confrontation with those animals are going to be different than bison and grizzly bears. And so some people just don't realize that a bison is a dangerous animal.
Yeah, they think it's like a cow, which makes me laugh because a bull cow actually is pretty dangerous.
It's pretty dangerous, yeah.
But, or a horse or a deer, right, which would run away when you approach. So understand that the core of a lot of these things, when we see these things happen in Yellowstone, they can create frustration and absolutely tragedy. I mean, how sad of the situation. Sometimes it's just based in ignorance, and if you don't know, you don't know. So having some patience and compassion and being willing to educate the public is kind of the first step. Because we see a lot of this stuff every day. So great question. I kind of went on and on there, but hopefully that answered that.
As far as a solution to this, I think the biggest thing is communication and is education, talking about these issues and in a respectful way reminding people when they are approaching wildlife. I think both of us have traveled to a bunch of the national parks in the country. A lot of the national parks have elk and obviously deer. And those animals, even though they're not as big as a bison and they seem harmless, can actually be very dangerous. When I was in college, I saw an elk attack a tourist in Grand Canyon National Park. And so even in areas outside of Yellowstone, it can be an issue. So it's just best to stay out of an animal's bubble, if you will.
And we're going on and on, but because this is a topic near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
But do you know the animal that is most responsible for animal attacks in the Grand Canyon?
It's elk, right?
No.
Oh, it's not elk.
It's chipmunks.
Oh my gosh.
Chipmunks have bitten more people in the Grand Canyon because people feed the chipmunks, and then the chipmunks become aggressive towards humans. So it's not just the large charismatic megafauna, responsible, ethical viewing and behavior towards all wildlife, regardless of little chipmunks all the way up to bears and bison.
Yeah, and of course, if you get bit by a chipmunk, you gotta get a rabies shot.
Yeah.
Which is a big pain.
Yeah.
You don't want that at all.
So, yeah, just such a bummer. All right, so let's see here. What do we got next here? Ooh, this is a good one.
What age do bears reach adulthood? This is a great question.
Yeah.
And it kind of depends on what species of bear we're talking about. Here in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, we have two bears. We kind of talked about those two species in the bear video, the American black bear and the grizzly bear. And life cycle wise, they're a little different. They have a lot of things similar. For example, male bears do hunt cubs in both species. But in general, black bears tend to grow up a lot quicker than grizzly bears. Black bears tend to be more of a habitat generalist. They're living in really any type of forest environment. And so they're not as reliant on those, heavy sources of protein, those really seasonal food sources. And they tend to grow a lot quicker. I'd say they reach adulthood, independence at about 2 years, and females can actually reproduce at 3 to 4 years of age, which is pretty quick for a large animal that can live, 20 plus years. Grizzlies are fascinating because it takes them longer. They're actually one of the slowest reproducing large mammals in North America. A female grizzly in some habitats can be 8 years old before she produces her first cubs, and many years older than that before she's successful at raising those cubs. I just read an article about grizzlies on the North Slope of Alaska, and their average age for their first litter of cubs is 9 years of age, which is crazy. Down here in Yellowstone, it's sooner. Usually it's around 5 or 6. And when those cubs mature, as far as the males, physically they're mature. They can mate at probably around the same age as the females, 5 or 6. Usually they're not breeding until they're much, much older, and that's because of aggressive male grizzlies. In the video, I don't know if you guys saw the super buff, hefty bear, the 500 plus pound boar. That bear's going to be 15 plus years old. He's in his prime. those are the bears that are mating with the females the most. And those younger bears just can't contend. In some populations that are hunted, younger bears do breed more often, and that's because those larger males do get taken out. And so in some areas of the country, like Colorado, where black bears are hunted, those large males are taken out more frequently, and those younger males will reproduce. Grizzlies in their lifetime really don't produce a lot of cubs compared to a lot of other species. In the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, a female grizzly will produce, on average, like 10 cubs in her lifetime. Bears, obviously, there's exceptions to that, but it's not a whole lot, especially if you compare it to like coyotes or some other carnivores. And so they do reproduce incredibly slowly. And, you know, that's really important for their conservation. Animals that reproduce slowly like that take a while to refill those gaps in the ecosystem. And so when we talk about bears being removed because they're being habituated and getting human food rewards, it can take a while if we're removing a lot of bears from a population for that population to kind of replenish itself because they reproduce so slowly.
I had a professor in college who called bears reproductive failures.
Yes.
That was such a good line.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, charismatic megafauna, we keep using that term. What do we mean?
Yeah.
Big, exciting, fuzzy things is what that means.
Elephants, bears, tigers.
Elephants aren't that fuzzy. Well, they're a little fuzzy.
Yeah, a little fuzzy.
But they all tend to be reproductive failures, quote unquote. So if you think of it, animals that are at the top of the food chain or near the top of the food chain, if they reproduce too quickly, they'll eat themselves out of house and home. And so they tend to reproduce slowly. They tend to live long lives because it takes a lot of knowledge and experience to succeed at the top of the food chain. So whether you're a panda bear or a tiger or an elephant or a grizzly, you tend to reproduce slowly. You tend to take a long time to raise your cubs because you have to show them a lot of different places and teach them how to survive. And you tend to repopulate very slowly. So it's no accident that most of those animals are on the endangered species list worldwide, because when you disrupt an ecosystem, the animal that's going to be most impacted is the animal at the top, who's impacted by everything that happens underneath it on that food chain. And so they're both set up to not overpopulate and sort of be very slow reproducers, and they're all set up to be most disturbed by other changes in the ecosystem. So it's no mistake that all of these really fuzzy, cute, adorable things at the tops of the food chain are all kind of in trouble worldwide.
A good way to think about it is kind of quality versus quantity. So like mice reproduce very quickly, but they don't invest a whole lot in their babies. And so they tend to replenish quickly, versus a bear lives a long time. So it's worthwhile to invest a lot of time and energy in those few offspring that you're going to produce. Pros and cons to that: in a human environment, in a human world, animals that reproduce the quickest tend to survive and tend to, persist. Those examples would be lots of insects, and mice and rats and a lot of birds, versus those charismatic megafauna. They're too specialized and they reproduce too slowly to adapt to a human controlled world.
Yeah, for sure. So great question. Thanks so much for that. Let's see here. Sadie, this is a great question. Sadie's asking, love your necklace, Tenley, where did you get it? Thank you for that. So I got it as a gift from my husband, so thanks to him. It is Zuni. It's a Native American necklace from the Southwest. It features, of course, a grizzly bear, and I'm a big fan of those guys. Of course, there's a lot of debate these days on how to respect cultural traditions. And one of the questions I oftentimes hear on tour is, should I wear Native American jewelry? Is that being respectful? Or should I leave it to Native peoples to wear their jewelry? In other words, am I culturally appropriating? And if you speak to the vast majority of Native peoples, particularly people who are crafting and working on these projects, they will all universally tell you, yes, as long as you do it in a respectful way and you're appreciative of the hard work that they do, they're more than happy to have you wear the benefits of their culture. There are certain items that any cultural group produces that are for that cultural group. And then there are things that they produce from their culture that they're willing to share. So never hesitate to support your local Native people in whatever craft and art they choose to engage in. I'm a particularly big fan of the Zuni people because they create animal fetishes. So lots of different animals, and they all have lots of different meanings. So the next time you have a chance to get into a store that sells Native American jewelry or anything else, check out the Zuni fetish section and find your animal that best aligns to your personality and, I don't know, spirit, so to speak. So yeah, thank you very much. That's really sweet for you to say. Our native local people, the Shoshone, there's actually 27 different tribes that are associated with Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park, but the Shoshone are kind of our largest population in modern day nearby. They live all over the West United States, but there's quite a few of them out on the Wind River Reservation along with the Northern Arapaho. They have family bead patterns that are floral in nature. And so you'll sometimes see, I'll also sometimes occasionally on the show wear particular floral patterns, and they actually represent particular families and traditions that go back many generations, which I think is just
kind of
neat.
like a family crest?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's
It's
cool.
exactly like a European family crest. You've got it. So let's see here. What do we got next? Ooh, this is a good one.
Bear questions.
Yeah, I always like bear questions.
Yeah. Well, 399's cubs. So they have split from their mother. We talked a little bit about that. It's always a little confusing when these things happen. Typically, the females run off their cubs when they come back into heat, when they come back into breeding condition. And there's a little bit of debate on whether that happened with 399's cubs. Some people are saying she ran them off. Other people are saying that a large male bear that people like to refer to as Bruno ran them off. That's debated. I don't think anyone actually witnessed that. I think they just saw bears running.
Yeah.
And didn't actually see 399 or Bruno chasing anyone off.
Yeah.
It's very common for either the female or a breeding male courting the mother of 2-year-old cubs to chase them off. As far as I know, they're pretty dispersed.
They're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, just because it's fun, we don't love to use names for bears on the show. We prefer to use research numbers because we don't want to anthropomorphize them, inflict human traits or personalities on them. But because Bruno doesn't have a collar, sometimes that's the most descriptive way we can refer to him. Bruno historically has run off some of her cubs, which is part of the reason people are thinking that's what happened in this case. We do know Bruno was romancing her. And we've certainly seen Bruno do that with some of her other cubs. So, it certainly seems like it's a strong possibility.
He did that 2 years ago with her previous litter.
Yeah, and he did it with the litter before, actually.
Yeah.
He did it with the triplets, too. So
they have a long relationship.
A lot of people ask if the cubs are Bruno's. We don't know. They may end up doing some genetic testing in the long run and finding this out, but mother bears can have multiple mates, and so each of those cubs could have a different father. It's hard to say.
And it's in their best interest to have multiple mates. It increases the genetic diversity of their offspring.
Yeah. As for the cubs, they have dispersed. There were 2 that were together for a little while. There's one that's been seen quite a bit in the northern kind of parts, and then there's another one that's been seen quite a bit in the southern parts. Unfortunately, that one has been wandering into areas historically where food rewards have been given to those bears, which we definitely don't want to have happen. So that bear was successfully hazed back into Grand Teton National Park, and we're hoping the lesson will stick. But so far, all 4 are alive and accounted for and learning how to be adult bears and living their lives. It's not unusual for us to see subadults do one of 2 strategies. The first is to zoom straight to where their mother's habitat was, particularly the females, and kind of hang out in that area because it's the area they know, or to disappear.
And they run off.
And we don't see them sometimes for years as a result of that. And that can be because 399 is so old and distinguished. She has some of the best territory for a bear in the continental United States. So a young bear is never going to be able to compete with large, aggressive males and females who hold those territories to stay in those places. 399 is an exception to the rule. She's sometimes tolerant of some of her offspring hanging out in the same area she hangs out. Her daughter 610 is a good example of that. But they kind of do one thing or the other. We either kind of see them hanging out or we just don't see them for a long time. 610 is a great example of that. As a subadult, she kind of wandered off outside of the park, and we didn't see her for...
She disappeared for 5 years.
I think 5 years was right. We didn't see her for a long time. So I was having a great time watching her sibling, 615, for quite a few years. Until unfortunately she was shot in a poaching incident. But I figured 610 was dead. I had no idea if she was around anymore after 5 years. I figured, well, that's that. She didn't make it. As we said, mortality in subadults is when they have the highest mortality of their lives, right? That 3 to 4 year old range. And then she randomly showed up one spring day in May with twins. And I hadn't seen her. So you never know with these guys. They could have long established histories, and we may never see them. But they could live wonderful long lives kind of deep in the wilderness. So we'll keep you posted as we know. But of course, 610 and her triplets have been quite a sighting to see. So the 399 family and legacy continues to endure, which is great fun. Let's see here. Oh, speaking of... You want this one? You want me to say it?
Yeah. So I actually was reading this specifically for the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And I read a couple different sources. And so I want Tenley's opinion.
Yeah.
I read that in certain areas, only about 50% of cubs survive their first year. And then I read in certain areas in Grand Teton where female bears have specific strategies like roadside behavior, there can be up to an 85% survival rate in their first year. And so it definitely does depend on the environment and on bear density. In areas where you have high bear densities, particularly large male grizzly densities, survival rates are going to go a lot lower. And so a lot of these females will live right next to the road to increase their cub survival. One of the, it's a trade-off. So one of the cons of that is they don't get very rich feeding opportunities because oftentimes these roads are in lowland areas where the habitat isn't as rich. Part of the reason the male bears don't like to be down in the lowlands for most of the year is because a lot of the really rich food sources like elk and army cutworm moths and whitebark pine, it's really high elevation food sources. And so a lot of the females give up those food sources in order to raise their cubs. And we talked a little bit about 610.
Yeah.
I have this theory that when she doesn't have cubs, she goes to high elevation areas because there's no risk of her losing those cubs. And as soon as she has cubs, she shows down in these more roadside areas where there's a lot more people as a way to protect those cubs. But she knows there's good food up there.
Yeah.
And so when she's pregnant, it makes sense for her to go and fatten up on those richer food sources at higher elevations. Really great question.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm just thinking about 610's offspring who also disappear unless they have cubs. Which would be mimicking her behavior. So that doesn't make sense. I think it's a great theory. As for survival of koi, not subadults, we were just talking about that. Like Tyler said, it's all over the map. It depends on so many factors. It depends on bear density in the ecosystem, depends on male bear density, where they are. It depends on food resources and density. So bears who are reliant on food sources that it's difficult to get cubs to are going to have a much lower level of survival. So greater Yellowstone ecosystem, for instance, is a good example than grizzly bears up in Alaska who are able to stay in lower altitude and continue to feed on protein-rich sources, which are advantages that we don't have. So koi have a higher survival rate in Alaska than they do in their greater Yellowstone ecosystem, for instance. So it's hard because I want to give you just a great number and be done with it. The other thing to keep in mind is grizzlies are really, really, really hard to research.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this stuff, there's so many wonderful unknowns about grizzlies. It's one of the things I love about them is I get to say, we don't know. It's not that Tyler and I don't know. It's that maybe nobody necessarily knows because it can vary. So really good question. The short answer is it's got one of the highest rates of mortality amongst predators in the natural world. But that said, it's incredibly variable. So great. We've got lots of bear questions. This is fun.
With most of these questions, oftentimes these answers are incredibly variable.
Yeah.
It's not always a set number that's universal across the entire animal kingdom. Within the Yellowstone ecosystem, it varies. And so, it really does depend. With these large carnivores, lions, tigers, obviously bears, polar bears, they do have high rates of juvenile mortality because of aggressive male bears. One thing I think is interesting is survival to reproduction age. I'm not sure what that is down here, but do you happen to know? That would be interesting to understand because cubs surviving their first year, that is a big statistic, that's important, but that doesn't quite get them to reproduction.
And I'm not sure if we just don't know or I'm just not sure. So we'll look into it and see if we've got an answer for you because now I'm curious.
I'm going to go digging because that got me, that got the wheels turning in my head. So
I do know with polar bears, more than 50% of them die before reaching maturation age. But that's only Alaskan polar bears. And remember, there's polar bears in Russia and polar bears in Europe. And so once again, I think it can vary. It's all about how much stress is placed on the environment. So really great question for sure. Oh, this is fun. Bonnie says, my late husband was a national park ranger. He said bison let you know how they're feeling. If they look at you, and they let you know that they let you know they've taken note of you. If they paw the ground, they're not happy with you. And if they raise their tail, they're going to charge or discharge. Oh my gosh, I'm stealing that. So that's wonderful. So Bonnie, you're absolutely right. So for those of you guys who are less familiar with bison tails, just like a horse's ears can tell you how he's seeing the world, bison tails are really good at seeing you in the world. So this is, asleep, relaxed, whatever. This is pooping. This is concerned or sometimes really happy. You'll see that in a cat, for instance.
Flies.
Flies. And then this is I'm deeply, deeply concerned, either at what I'm looking at or at what I'm hearing or what everyone else is concerned about. So when I see this tail, it's usually one of three things that's going on. It's either the bison rut, and that's a male looking at another male going, get out of my territory and get away from my females. It's a bison looking at a human going, you've gotten too close, usually to my calf, and you need to back off. Or it's a whole bunch of bison that have done that all at once because they're concerned that one bison has sensed something, and so they're all kind of on high alert. So I always joke that, you're fine until you get to about here, except for the pooping part.
Mid-level, above mid-level, and then as soon as it goes any higher than that, then you gotta be really careful.
But a great way to think about it, any animal that is spending time looking at you instead of engaging in natural behavior is undergoing stress. There's no reason you should ever be close to any wildlife to the point where it feels like it has to watch you and stop what it's doing. So it's giving up a meal, it's giving up energy, it's giving up it's causing it stress, and it's keeping it from living a natural life if it has to concentrate on anything other than what's in the natural environment. So we use a lot of spotting scopes, for instance, so that we can get up close and personal views of things without causing that animal stress. So
all of the bear videos that you guys saw today and all the moose videos are shot through our high-powered spotting scopes. And so we try to be as ethical as possible and to really read the animal's behavior. That's a big thing that we talk about in training is we don't want to be out there changing an animal's behavior, whether or not we're 100 yards, away from, whether or not we're with, beyond that legal distance. If we're 300 yards away from that bear and that bear is taking a lot of concern and a lot of energy noticing us, that is a situation that we probably want to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually, we'd rather find a nice private experience with a bear than engage in a bear jam, for instance. Yeah. We don't need to be at a bear jam. We can go and enjoy a bear in a way that's not going to cause them stress. That said, it's all we can do is encourage good behavior. We're not here to preach or try to tell everybody else what to do. We're just trying to have these animals live their best lives, right? Okay, so more
happy animals.
More to the point, Pam is really, really smart. So Pam, you're 100% right. Well done. The capybara is the world's largest rodent. If you guys are unfamiliar with what a capybara looks like, they're the coolest thing ever.
Yes.
They're the coolest thing ever.
They're like giant guinea pigs, and they're, guinea pigs aren't super aquatic, but capybaras are
Is that how you say it?
incredibly
Am I
aquatic.
saying it wrong? Capybara? Is that right?
Capybara.
Capybara. Okay.
That's what I say.
I don't know.
But did you say capybara?
I said capybara. I think it's
say
probably
capybara.
wrong. Capybara.
The only reason I say capybara is because that's what David Attenborough says on all the documentaries, and so
but
he's
he
like
also says jaguar.
I know, so I might be completely
Maybe you're
wrong.
saying it
so
British.
I'm saying it the British way.
Do we have any capybara experts in the comment section? Let us know how to say it because we don't know. Native to South America, of
They're
course.
kind of like aquatic South American rodent hippos.
Yes.
They live in the swamps. Some of their biggest predators are anacondas and caimans and jaguars.
Jaguars, yeah, there we go.
Jaguars.
Thank you, David Attenborough. I kind of learned how to say all these things as a kid from David Attenborough. So
Same here, yeah.
That's awesome. Mark, great question.
Spring.
So with all the severe weather going on this spring, have there been any reported tornadoes in Grand Teton or Yellowstone in 2022 or recent years? If so, what are the protocols taken for visitor safety?
Yeah. So I don't think, has there ever been a tornado recorded? No, there's never been a tornado recorded in Grand Teton or Yellowstone, which might seem super surprising for a lot of people because we do have quite a bit of flat, open country. For these tornadoes to form, you do need like entire landscapes, geographic areas of flat country. We simply just have too many mountains for that sort of weather pattern to form here. And so I feel really fortunate to say that we live in a tornado-free area and a hurricane-free area. We do get lots of snowstorms and occasional hailstorms, but I mean, not as bad as what you get in Florida or in the Great Plains.
People ask how I could be so crazy to live near a super volcano, which is unlikely to erupt and is dormant. And I go, why would you be so crazy to live on the beach, right, in hurricane country, right? So we do joke around here that we don't have a small number of wonderful natural disasters. We've got, forest fires. We get those. Avalanches, earthquakes. All the great perils of living in the mountains.
Landslides. Landslides. Yep.
Yeah. But no tornadoes and no hurricanes and no alligators.
One time, before I was a guide, I worked as a field technician. I was in South Dakota.
Yeah.
And I was in a work vehicle, and I had tennis ball size hail hit my vehicle and almost completely shatter the windshield, and I barely got it under the overhang of a gas station. And just waited it out, and there was just I don't know, holes almost all over my vehicle, and it was a work vehicle too.
Wow, see, that's terrifying. We don't have that.
So we don't have that. That was in South Dakota.
Oh
that was
my gosh.
Crazy.
So we do get, of course, major weather systems, but they don't have enough space, enough altitude. They have to rise to get over the mountains. Most of our weather moves west to east. In order to kind of form these supercells that are required to form tornadoes. So tornadoes, of course, do form further east after they get, these storm clouds get through us. Certainly eastern Wyoming can get tornadoes. But yeah, as for the rest of it, forest fires, the federal government keeps people well away from those. Earthquakes are few and far between. We do have many earthquakes, up to 10 a day. You just can't feel them. The large earthquakes, we are one of the most earthquake protected communities in the United States. Every building built in Teton County is built to withstand a more powerful earthquake than any other community in the United States, including San Francisco. So we are as earthquake protected and prepared, I think, as we probably can be. And then things like landslides and things, the U.S. Geological Survey does a really good job of monitoring those kinds of things. So yeah, really good question. That's fantastic. Gosh, I think we're just about out of time here, which is so sad because we love answering all these questions and these are great.
It's always hard to stop answering. Oh God.
Okay, we'll do one more. And this might be a matter of opinion. What's the most rare animal in Yellowstone?
Well, there's an obvious one.
There is?
Yeah.
What?
Bigfoot.
Oh, I was gonna go with a jackalope. So besides Bigfoot and the jackalope and the chupacabras, oh gosh, mink are incredibly unusual. Yeah. So that'd be a good one. Do you have one?
Canada lynx. We talked a little bit about that. Wolverine.
Yeah. Oh, Wolverine. Wolverine definitely wins. Yeah.
A couple of bird species. Yeah. So a pileated woodpecker. A couple of the biologists last year in Yellowstone actually found a pair of nesting pileated woodpeckers in the park. So, biggest woodpecker in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So if you've got any other ones you think are pretty darn rare that you've had an opportunity to experience, let us know. But guys, I do want to thank everybody for joining us this month. It's always a pleasure. Definitely let us know what you think, what you'd like to see. I hope you all have a wild month, and we'll see you next month, first Wednesday, 5:30 every month here on Facebook Live. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.